Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist and the author of the Complete Compliance Handbook, and I'd like to welcome you to This Week in FCPA, Episode 110 for the week ending July 6, 2018, the post-holiday edition. As we begin the post-holiday portion of our July 4th week, Jay Rosen and I are back in the saddle again to take a look at some of the week's top compliance and ethics stories. But first, a word about our sponsors, Affiliated Monitors. Founded in 2004, Affiliated Monitors provides professional, independent integrity monitoring and ethics and compliance assessments nationally and internationally and across all industries. With its knowledge of effective ethics and compliance programs and cultures, Affiliated Monitors is respected for its work as the corporate monitor on matters ranging from multinational corporations to small and mid-sized companies and even individuals. Having served in over 600 monitorships, no one has more experience as an independent monitor than the team at Affiliated Monitors. For more information on how an independent monitor can help improve your company's ethics and compliance program, visit our sponsor's website, www.affiliatedmonitors.com. We start with Credit Suisse, settlement with the Department of Justice and SEC for its illegal hiring practices of family members violating the FCPA. We consider how Homeland Security Investigations helps FCPA Investigations. We take a look at ZTE starting its comeback by changing senior management. Jim Beam goes down harshly with an FCPA violation in India. The 1MDB scandal continues to percolate along with the arrest of the former Prime Minister of Malaysia around the scandal. Matt Kelly explores the two parts of compliance in a discussion of Michigan State and Larry Nassar. We ask if there should be a difference between reimbursement and remediation in the OXIF matter. Africa Resources says yes, and they make their case to the Department of Justice. We conclude with taking a look at why investigators should prepare for artificial intelligence. This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist. This Week in FCPA is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network. The 10 of This Week in FCPA for the week ending July 6th, 2018, the post-holiday edition. As we begin our post-holiday portion of the July 4th week, Jay Rosen, Mr. Monitors, and myself are back in the saddle again to take a look at some of the top compliance and ethics stories over the past week. Jay, we actually had quite a FCPA and compliance week, so you want to jump right into it with telling us about Credit Suisse?
Sure. And before I do that, you said we're on episode 110, where my wife is working now in Northridge, California. It is 114 degrees in the shade. And right here in balmy Simi Valley, it's 109. So I think it's significant that both the podcast and the weather is in triple digits. Credit Suisse is a story we've heard before. It falls into the princeling hiring schemes that have affected in the past. In 2016, JP Morgan paid a fine. BN Mellon did in 2015, and chipmaker Qualcomm did as well. And basically, Credit Suisse and its Hong Kong unit agreed to pay the DOJ $76.7 million for a referral hiring scheme that violated the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. They will pay $47 million to the DOJ, and then the Zurich-based parent Credit Suisse Group settled a concurrent issue with the SEC. They will disgorge $24.9 million of ill-gotten gains, and they will pay more than $4.8 million in prejudgment interest. What's interesting about this is it's definitely an apparent reflection of the Fed's new no piling on policy. The SEC said it didn't impose a civil penalty based upon the imposition of the $47 million criminal fine. So this has been going on now. The investigation's been going for the last several years. So I guess my question, Tom, is do we think that there are any more of these in the pipeline, or do you think that the investigation on the Prince has run its course?
So I guess my sense would be, Jay, there are probably more in the pipeline. The conduct of Credit Suisse, I think, was between 2007 and 2013. So indicating, once again, how long some of these FCPA matters take. I would say or the Department of Justice and the SEC probably had to deal with multiple enforcement agencies across the globe. Getting documents literally across the globe is always not necessarily problematic, but it certainly takes time. So I think it would not surprise me to see this more enforcement actions going forward. Companies, I think, have gotten the message now, certainly starting with BNY Mellon and the $284 million fine against JP Morgan. What struck me, Jay, about this case was, first of all, over a 7-year period, Credit Suisse Hong Kong hired more than 100 employees at the request of foreign officials. And the company in Hong Kong clearly knew that this was a violation of internal company policy and procedure, and went out of their way to hide this from the corporate parent, even to the point of typing up resumes for candidates. To the extent they could, they avoided sending candidates through the regular hiring process. They promoted and retained candidates at the specific request of foreign government officials and of employees of state-owned enterprises. They even took one candidate hire. Her employee, I guess, was brought to the United States for some reason, and they brought the person's mother along to do some shopping. So it was pretty clear what was going on at Credit Suisse. It was pretty clear they knew what they were doing, at least in Hong Kong, to violate the law. So we had a apparent reflection of the new no piling on policy, because the SEC did not impose a civil penalty based upon the imposition of a $47 million criminal fine by the Department of Justice. Probably for the compliance practitioner, Jay, there is a very direct and distinct message continuing in these series of cases, the Princeling cases. It is that if a son or daughter, family member, or close friend of a foreign government official does not meet your minimum hiring standards, that's the end of the story, full stop. You cannot hire that person. Now, beyond that, you can hire them. It is potentially a high-risk situation, but I think it's a high risk that can be easily managed. If you send them through the regular hiring process, if you ring fence them or dare I use the phrase Chinese wall them from working on any matters involving their family relations or close personal friends, I think that risk can be managed appropriately and properly. But Credit Suisse clearly made the decision that they were going to violate internal company policy. They tied the hires, promotions, and salary increases directly to increased business. So it was a pretty clear violation of the FCPA and current understanding of it as the Department of Justice and SEC have interpreted it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And just one final note to tie to it, Charles Kane, chief of the SEC's FCPA unit, said, bribery can take many forms, including granting employment to friends and relatives of government officials. So that really goes to underscore what's, we always talk about anything of value. And that's why I think these hirings by the investment banks and even Qualcomm is so egregious, that they were very much aware of the benefit that was being granted by bringing on these unqualified candidates. Next up, Tom's going to tell us about Homeland Security Investigations, and they are part of ICE, and ICE has been in the news, but they do a very different duty, and they really have a large part in FCPA investigations. So why don't you take it from there, Tom?
Yes, there is a agency within the department or within ICE, the U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Agency, named the Homeland Security Investigations. This is the investigative arm of ICE, and they have, I was frankly not aware of their role in FCPA investigations. And in a piece entitled The Forgotten FCPA Investigators by Clara Hudson over on the Global Investigations Reviews, she talks about this agency, what it does, and it basically investigates crimes around the border. So money's brought in, people brought in, goods goods and products brought in. And in the piece, she detailed a plane that came in where the records showed payments in round dollars and simply from those bank records, they initiated a FCPA investigation because clearly when you have round dollar payments in financial documents, it can look like a bribe payment. It can certainly be a red flag. And they found customs documents for equipment being shipped to PDVSA, for instance, which listed grossly overpriced items that investigators believe were padding for bribe payments. So certainly appropriate when such information crosses the border. The problem for Homeland Security in investigations is that foreign governments and foreign officials, foreign agencies are loath to cooperate with them now because of the controversy surrounding the not ICE policy, but immigration or customs and border policy of separating families, and that many foreign governments were rightfully appalled at this. Certainly, the federal government has not moved to reunite these families, so it's a continuing problem. And indeed, what we found was in June, 19 SHI special agents wrote that the functions of HSI in Homeland Security, in ICE, were causing confusion not only with the general public, but with foreign investigative agencies. So basically, it was a very interesting article about a group that doesn't get a lot of publicity, but it shows how the U.S. government has multiple ways to investigate or come up with information around bribery and corruption.
Yeah, really interesting article, Tom. I might have missed it. I've got the gardeners outside making a big noise, but did you get to say my favorite words that come out of your mouth, Republic of Equatorial Guinea, or not?
I did not.
Okay, because it says here, in one of the HSI's higher profile cases, its agents led an investigation into the vice president of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, who allegedly accepted millions in bribes and kickbacks before embarking on a corruption-fueled spending spree in the U.S. So I would just also want to echo what Tom says, that the timing of this is very interesting. With many of the Democrats wanting to dismantle ICE, you even have their investigative arm wanting to get away from the reputational risk of being identified as ICE. So very interesting there. Next up, we're sticking with newsworthy stuff, and Sam Rubenfeld has an article in, I believe, this morning's Risk and Compliance Journal about ZTE. And Tom, what's the latest on that one?
So ZTE, I think most of our listeners will recall, negotiated a reprieve with the Department of Commerce from the catastrophic or draconian sanction that they could not import any products from the United States or buy exported U.S. products. And as part of the new settlement, they agreed to U.S. monitors embedded in the company, $1 billion fine, and $400 million stored in escrow. But ZTE also had to make significant changes at the top. So they had to bring in basically clean house at their senior executive level. They brought in a new chief as well as other top executives in an effort to comply with the new agreement, even with Congress claiming that or trying to stop this going forward. So clearly ZTE wants to move forward under the new agreement, and it looks like they're beginning to initiate the requirements under the Department of Commerce settlement agreement. Whether they are able to continue to do so or not, we're going to have to watch it. But with ZTE moving forward, hopefully that with the president's very big concern about jobs in China, hopefully this will ameliorate his concern of the loss of jobs in China. because of a company violating U.S. laws. So perhaps we'll see ZTE back up in place, but Congress really has yet to fully speak on this matter. So perhaps they're not as concerned about jobs in China as the president is.
Next up, again, something from Risk and Compliance Journal. Our good friend Henry Cutter talks about Jim Beam and the liquor maker of Jim Beam and Centauri whiskey, which is called Beam Centauri, will pay an $8.2 million fine to settle an SEC investigation of alleged violations of accounting provisions of the main U.S. anti-bribery law, party said on Monday. The company, which was acquired by Japan Centauri Holdings in 2014, neither admitted nor denied the wrongdoing. Beam Centauri disclosed in 2012 that it had begun an internal investigation of practices in its Indian operations, saying at the time that it had informed the SEC and the Department of Justice of the probe. And the scheme involved third parties hired by Beam's Indian subsidiary who made illicit payments from at least 2006 to 2012 to government officials to increase sales, clear regulatory hurdles. Those third parties were paid via falsified invoices, leading Beam India and ultimately Beam Inc. to falsely record expenses in the books. Also in 2011, a third-party bottler paid an Indian official about $1 million rupees, $18,000, or the equivalent of 1 year's salary, to approve the registration of product Beam was trying to launch in India. The company has agreed to pay $5.3 million for its wrongdoing and roughly $917,000 in interest and a penalty of $2 million. So. This one, again, we're going back to behavior that happened almost 12 years, a decade ago. So this is not the first time we've seen things happening in India, but I guess in terms of the size of the settlement, it does not jump onto the top 10 list, but it also really does point out both successor liability, which Centauri Holdings had, and just also about when you're doing business in regions where bribery is known to exist, you really need to be extra cautious.
And I guess I would just add, Jay, that this is one of a series of cases we've seen specifically out of India where it was the Indian third party that was the one paid the bribe. So obviously Oracle, perhaps not obviously, but Oracle started this parade, and then we had InBev, we had Cadbury's, and now we've got Jim Beam. So if you've got, and in all of these were all SEC settlements, not Department of Justice settlements. And what that typically means is they couldn't get direct evidence of a bribe being paid. So here, once again, it's focused on the books and records and not recording things properly. So you're absolutely right. If you're doing business in a high-risk jurisdiction, and India is a high-risk jurisdiction, you need to scrub your third parties. You need to see if you've got anything in there that could potentially come back to bite you at the end of the day.
So next up, we have a story that Tom has been following for several years. It is about the investment fund for Malaysia, 1MDB. And what is the latest here, Tom?
So this story has really taken off, Jay, with the election of the new Prime Minister, who was brought in basically because of the corruption that the prior Prime Minister, Mr. Najib Razak, had engaged in around the Sovereign Wealth Fund, 1MDB. And in May, he was ousted by his former mentor, Matahir Mohammed, who campaigned on bringing him to justice and frankly has done so because he and his wife were arrested and charged with bribery and corruption. This week, they were released on bail. There were just very, very I won't say horrific, but some pretty striking photographs and information about raids on his home, which found well over hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, jewelry. For those of you who are purse people, 567 purses from Jimmy Choo. I don't know if you're a Jimmy Choo fan. That's not big in the Fox household. Nevertheless, there are women who do like Jimmy Choo. So rings, tiaras, all forms of jewelry, lots of cash, all in the home of the former Prime Minister. The Malaysian government has frozen, I think it's 70 bank accounts, and are investigating another 400 individuals and companies who've done business with the Sovereign Wealth Fund. You're right, Jay, I've been following this for many years. It's been a huge scandal, literally across the world. We've had stolen money, or dare I say purloined money, that was invested in the United States in real estate in Manhattan, real estate in Los Angeles. The Wolf of Wall Street was largely funded on money alleged to have been stolen from one MDB, other properties purchased in the United States. So really rarely do you see a former prime minister brought to justice or at least arrested so quickly, and that Malaysia really seems very insistent on cleaning up the mess that was created by prior Prime Minister Najib.
All right, next up, we're going to take a look at an article written by Matt Kelly from Radical Compliance, another compliance lesson from Michigan State. And unfortunately, we all know about the situation with Larry Nassar, who was a doctor affiliated with both the university, both Michigan State, and also was the team physician for the U.S. Which team is it, Tom? I'm trying to blank.
U.S. Gymnastics.
Gymnastics, yeah. So Tom has a couple different folks who are taking issue with how things are moving forward with the interim head of ethics and compliance at Michigan State, former Governor John Engler. And what's got Matt steamed up today?
So a couple of things. First of all, Engler made an announcement last week that they're creating a new Office of Ethics, Risk Management, and Compliance. And he told the Detroit Free Press in an interview that the new head of compliance will be in charge of seeing red flags. In just a scorching article in response to this in a site called FREEP, F-R-E-E-P, columnist Rochelle Riley excoriated Engler and said that flags don't catch people, people catch people, and people listen to people, and dozens of girls might have been spared if the first ones had been listened to. And Matt takes both of these points and really articulates that they are all part of an effective compliance program. So he said that in compliance jargon, we would say Riley is frustrated about escalation and tone at the top. She wants the victims to be heard. Governor Engler, the interim president of Michigan State, is focusing on institutional repair through procedure and transparency. And Matt comes down that you really need both. The problem for Engler now is he made just some horrific comments prior to the resolution, the financial resolution with the victims. At one point, even saying, I think that one of the victims was getting a kickback from other victims. And very, very, very poor choice of words if it was that. But organizations have many constituencies. They have a board of directors, they have stockholders, they have shareholders, they have third parties, they have employees. At a university, it's only more because you have students, you have the parents of students, you have the public, you have, like myself, alumni of Michigan State. And the crisis at Michigan State now is about trust and unfortunately mistrust. And with the smear that Engler made on the former victim, it can be difficult to see why there's or couldn't it would be not difficult to see why there is not such skepticism involving what they have in place. Now, they named today an interim head for their compliance office. It's someone from their School of Law, but it's not clear how this office is going to be funded. It's not clear what authority this person will have, the new CCO. What is clear is they have a huge mess, and they have got to do more than simply spot and respond to red flags. The university is going to have to change its entire approach and certainly its tone. So interesting critique by Matt, but really two sides of very important parts of any compliance program going forward. But I would come down, Jay, that if you don't have trust, you're never going to have anything close to a successful compliance program.
Yeah, I would totally agree. So moving from that, we are calling back another name that we've heard in the past, OCSIF, which was the first U.S. hedge fund to get caught up in an FCPA investigation. And this is always kind of interesting when you're looking at rights to mines in Africa and who owns what and who does what. And basically, I think you're going to have to help me because I've read this a few times and I'm not sure who's zooming who. But basically, rights to a mine were stolen from by an African subsidiary of OCSIF called OZ Africa Management. And what happened was somebody had acquired rights to the mine for about $600,000, but then they put it on their books and valued it at $100 million. And the sale and auction of this mine took place on a Sunday when all the DRC courts were closed. And basically, the victims were looking for restitution here. And initially, I believe the government was confused as to what happened and who the restitution was due. And now there's a company called Africo Resources, which is represented by the law firm Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati. And they are now looking to clarify the issue and get OCSIF to make restitution. Did I not butcher that too badly?
Nope. You did a pretty good job. Rarely do you get a claim for restitution by a company impacted by bribery and corruption, or in this case, having a property stolen away from them. And that is exactly what happened to Africo Resources. We've seen previous examples for attempted restitution by the companies involved. So the Haitian Telecom Company is probably the most prominent who sought restitution, but they did not receive it. I think in large part because they were part of the group that benefited from receiving the bribes. But here, Africo at least makes a very strong claim, Jay, that they had the property stolen from them. The Department of Justice had originally been under taking the position that Africo had obtained the the mine through bribery and corruption or other nefarious means, but they sought to have the Department of Justice revisit that issue and have done so. So it'll be very interesting. I know the court was very critical of the OCSIF resolution, mainly because only one individual was criminally prosecuted, and it was a third-party agent of OCSIF, no OCSIF principal. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not Africo Resources is successful in their restitution claim, and if they're successful, who else may come out of the woodwork.
All right. Seems that we have a preponderance of articles today from Global Investigation Review, and we're picking up something that Pete Humphreys published earlier this week from the GIR Women Investigations Conference in London on June 28th. And he recounts a panel that was called Practical Aspects of International Investigation. And Basically, they were really giving praise to U.S. regulators for being very technologically savvy and for being able to use electronic methods, whether it's e-discovery or any other type of artificial intelligence, to try to help really handle large volumes of documents and to make it much more accessible for working on investigations. And a couple quotes that struck me as interesting was Rita Mitchell of Wilkie Farr and Gallagher said, "I'm not sure that there are enough junior attorneys in the world to deal with the amount of the information that is coming down the line." And there was also a situation where the UK Serious Fraud Office actually used artificial intelligence in the Rolls-Royce investigation to really narrow down a set of documents. And basically, the SFO said that the technology helped it identify 2.35 million documents which were not privileged and could immediately be released to the case team. And this was also utilized. Lord Justice Gross spoke in a speech on disclosure at an event at the Criminal Bar Association of England and Wales. And in the speech, he said when there was a failure of technology, it could potentially be avoided. Rather, there was a failure of coming up with evidence in the Liam Allen rape trial. And he said that this kind of failure could potentially be avoided by using technology that could reduce the amount of time. So not only is AI important in using e-discovery, but one thing that was interesting is Cheryl Scarborough spoke about a case, and she's with Simpson Thacher and Bartlett, and she said that the U.S. government is more tech savvy than ever before and open to accepting use of new technology. However, she cautioned that using AI does not always go with the plan. And she gave an example of a case where they had suggested that the client use software to translate, that's near and dear to my heart, material from the foreign language into English. Unfortunately, she said the technology failed, throwing up random words like dog and cat and refrigerator. She said going back over the translations to remove the nonsensical phrases would have cost too much and been too time consuming, but she was still happy to see that the government was willing to give it a shot and give it a try. So again, this is a theme that we seem to be talking about weekly, about how AI can be used either internally as if you're a company to try to find any gaps that you need to cover or to anticipate trends, but it also can be used from the investigative perspective, and it seems like the DOJ is doing quite well on that front. Anything to add on that, Tom?
No, I thought it was a good summary, although frankly, I think as you point out, Jay, much of this has been going on for some time, but it does speak to a role that was near and dear to your former heart as the former Minister of Translation. So it's where we're going, that's for sure.
So how hot is it in Houston, and how was the book signing last week?
So the book signing was good and a lot of fun. So it's actually not too bad here, certainly not triple digits. We had 8 inches of rain on the 4th. So that was our big news. But I do have some news about some events next week, Jay.
Sure.
On Thursday, the Greater Houston Business and Ethics Roundtable, that's Gerber for those in the know, that Gerber, we're holding our members-only summer workshop Thursday, July 12th from 9 to 3. Matt Kelly's going to join us. Jonathan Marks will join us. We've got Kara Brockmeyer coming down. Dan Chapman's going to talk to us about trade compliance. And Marcia Urshigami Hames is coming down from LRN to give our keynote lunch speech. So if you're a Gerber member, I hope you'll join us. It's free to all Gerber members. If you're not a Gerber member, sorry, this is a members-only meeting. But the next day on Friday, the 13th, Jonathan Marks is going to speak to the Houston Compliance Roundtable from 8 to 9 a.m. If you'd like more information, you can contact me at my email, and I'll certainly give that out to you as well. So 2 great compliance events in Houston next week, and if you're around, I hope you can make one of them.
once again affirming the fact that Houston is the center of the FCPA world.
That's epicenter.
Oh,
So not Equatorial Guinea.
okay. So
You wanna take us
anyhow,
home?
yeah, I'll take us home. On behalf of Tom Fox, the compliance evangelist, and myself, Jay Rosen, Mr. Monitor, we'd like to thank you for spending this week in FCPA with us, episode 110, the post-holiday issue, and also the temperature here in Simi Valley. If you've listened to us on iTunes or Libsyn, if you can like us, that will help our rankings go. And we'd just like to, as always, thank you for spending time with us, speaking about all things compliance, ethics, and FCPA. And if you are on holiday already, enjoy it. And if not, enjoy the weekend coming up. And that's it. Thanks so much.
This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of This Week in FCPA. If you have any questions, you can email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. You can email Jay at jrosen@affiliatedmonitors.com. Thanks again for listening to This Week in FCPA for the week ending July 6,